Lawrence in Dallas, how are you?
Hey, Matt.
Thanks for waiting.
Oh, man, it's all good, man. First of all, I just want to say, man, you, JD, and Tracy, man, well, you and JD, man, like, I mean, Jeff D, I'm sorry. Like, I would never want to go against y'all. Like, I would hate to be Ted Haggard against you two. Like,
they're all the nicest people you would ever meet, I promise.
Yeah. But you cool too, Don. Like, okay. you cool too. But
no, they're awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. They're awesome.
And it's just funny, like that last caller. It's just overwhelming and mind-boggling how people are still, I guess I can say, warped.
Yeah.
Or like, kind of like have that, that religion on the brain thing. And I was like that. I mean, I hate that, I know that's a cliche and, stuff like that. But I just remember how adherent I was about Christianity. And even in the midst of me, like, reading the Bible and stuff and, studying it, it was things I've come across. Like, I started from Genesis and just went on. And even the things that, like the slaughter of women and children and slavery being okay, like, it was just things, like, that just really didn't rub me right. Like, like, wow.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the Bible's a great path to atheism.
Right. And I listen to you guys all the time. Like, I pull up all your YouTube clips, and I've been watching you guys every day for a year now. And man, like,
go outside, take a walk.
I hope you. Like I said, I'm not going to take up a lot of your time. I hope you guys keep up the good work. I mean, whether you know it or not, I mean, people out there like such as myself really have learned a lot just from looking at you guys' archives.
Well, thanks very much.
I didn't know what the hell biogenesis was until I ran across Matt.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot of good stuff out there. Yeah.
It's just sad because, being African American, predominantly our community consists of, as far as religion, Christianity. And I mean, you would think, like, this particular group, like, we would be less inclined to be Christian, and I just don't understand this. Even some of my closest friends, man, they look at me as I was like, oh, you're agnostics, and, here you go with your agnosticism, and, I'm like, man.
I see this in the gay community, too. There's a lot of gay people that are really being persecuted today by Christians, and it just doesn't occur to them to question their religious faith. They just don't even think about it because it's such an entrenched thing. I think that there's this quote by a priest number of centuries ago that give me a child to the age of 7 and I'll have him forever. Sort of.
Oh, wow.
And this is really kind of true. Yeah, this is really kind of true. It is a very hard thing to leave the church, leave the teachings, leave your culture, right? Because there's so much pressure not to do that. And so, in the African American community, the church is really a big part of the social glue there.
Exactly.
And it's just really tough to be an outsider. It takes a certain kind of personality who's very strong. And I'm thrilled that we have role models like Reggie Finley and Neil deGrasse Tyson. They're awesome role models, and I hope that more people will follow in their footsteps. Maybe you can do that.
So my question for you, Lawrence, since we've been asked this and we've addressed it a number of times, is do you have an explanation for why there's not a bigger African American presence in the atheist agnostic community?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your perspective.
And why so many of them seem to be ironically attached to the same religion that enslaved them?
Honestly, I mean, I think it goes as far as back as, I hate to be repetitive or anything, as far as back as slavery. Master used this book to justify, the injusticeness and the horrendousness, if that's a word, of that whole thing that took place, and therefore, we couldn't read, at a certain point in time, and then, when this book was introduced and bestowed upon us, I guess it gave hope, in a sense, and we ran with it, and it was passed down, just like things of this, like anything today, it was passed down, and therefore, that's how you came about that. I mean,
well, there are some strong messages in the Bible about being oppressed and how to cope in that situation, and that might be heartening for folks, right?
And to be fair, while I will stand by my position all day long that it was secular progressive values that have begun the process of systematically ending slavery. This wasn't done entirely by secularists. There was a huge segment of the Christian population that were abolitionists, that were proponents of ending slavery. Now, they were directly in violation of what their own holy book said, but it was like we talked before about how Islam is kind of in its infancy and hasn't been dragged kicking and screaming into the modern era the way the bulk of Christianity has. And so but Christianity didn't change because the Bible changed, because we know that that's not happening. It didn't change because God came down and gave a new revelation, because, well, we know
that's not going to happen either.
It changed because the culture around it changed.
And forced it to change, right.
Look at the things that people considered the values that they held in biblical times, and then in later centuries as you progress, there's a well, not really steady, but there's an upward trend, and it's because of the influence of the secular society and the progressives and the people who were more concerned with equality and freedom and unity than the divisive, oppressive, authoritarian kind of pattern that Christianity began with and that Judaism began with.
Exactly. And I mean, not to disregard that, but I mean, like as far as family values and stuff, I honestly do not see how one could derive their morality from from book. And
yes, I agree.
You know, it's like you guys always touch on this. You know, how certain most Christians, the hell with it. Most Christians, they want to pick whatever is fluffy and whatever is convenient, and oh, but he loves us, and you know, he gave his only begotten son, but totally disregard the slaughter of innocent Egyptian children.
At the
you
end
know, how the blood sacrifices and rape and all that kind of stuff, and how God basically has a bigger body count than the devil, because in actuality the devil doesn't seem like that bad of a guy.
Yeah, not only that, but evidently God stupidly created a system where the devil wins by default. Like, I'm going to set up this game with you, and I'm going to give you all the chips, and the chips have to voluntarily choose to come over to my side. Who sets up a game like that?
One more thing, because I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time. I was going back and forth with a reverend or deacon or whatever he was, and the best he could come up with, he asked me, okay, why aren't you religious anymore? Why don't you, you know, I said, well, because like you, Matt, like, you know, I've actually read the Bible, and even if there is a God, or God in the Bible anyway, which is a title.
It's pretty stinky, right?
I don't think I would want to worship anybody like that. And, you know, he goes off and uses some irrelevant analogy about, you know, the king and the kingdom has to make sacrifice. I'm like, whatever. So, you know, make a long story short, the best thing he could come up with to justify it is the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I want to know, like, where do you stand with the Dead Sea Scrolls? You know, how is that relevant to?
They're not. I mean, they're old papers, and they're useful for trying to determine as best we can what the earliest versions of Judaism and Christianity look like. But no text on its own could ever be sufficient to justify a miracle claim or a God claim. That's just unreasonable. And the example that I've used, and you've heard it probably before, so I won't repeat it in detail, is I like to compare it to UFO abduction stories, where you can actually go and interview somebody who makes this claim, and several people, and their claims are consistent. They're living people right now, and yet we don't believe them. So why would we believe the anonymous writings of people from thousands of years ago when they clearly knew a lot less about how the world worked than we do now?
Yeah.
Right.
And I have another pointer. Thomas Paine, one of the founders of the United States, wrote a pamphlet called Common Sense, where he argues very eloquently 200 years ago that God would never use a written thing to communicate his meaning to people.
Right.
And that's every argument he made in there is still valid today. This is good stuff.